And then hear from someone really neat in the community. Crossover is a really wonderful topic, and we are going to talk about that in a second. But first, we have a special guest. You're sitting in a room with a lot of beautiful art, and you might have a lot of questions about it. And we might have people that might know things about this. So I'm going to bring up Liz, who works here at the Halsey, and she is going to tell us some things about some stuff and introduce someone. So, get this.
Lots of things about lots of different stuff. That's a good intro. So welcome everyone to the Halsey Institute. My name is Liz Biswell. I'm the Curator of Education and Public Programs here. So the work that we're surrounded in today by is Jamadi. He is an Indonesian artist who spends a lot of his time traveling from different residencies around the U.S. Two in the U.S. and then kind of around Europe, around in Southeast Asia, and then our other gallery where all of the delicious coffee and bagels are is the work of Picasso, Jacques Prévert, and André Malraux. So I'd like to introduce Jamadi so that he can say a little bit about his work. He's joined us this morning somewhere. Hi Jamadi, are you in the gallery? Hey! I was hoping you didn't want to wrap this up.
Are you looking for me?
Yeah, I like your long sheet of notes. I hope you're going to read it.
Yeah. Thank you for coming to the show, everyone. Thank you for letting me having a show in your beautiful town. It's such a privilege for me to spend at least 5 weeks now here to see what's going on and working with very close team, like feel like that you work with your family somehow, and that's quite special. Yeah, as we know that we are in the time of globalization when things merging from bigger places to the smaller places, from bigger nations to the smaller villages in of far away part of the world. And as I am from Indonesia, it is a little confusing if you are part of the history of colonialization and post-colonial take us this far, but we still try to work out our identity. So let me tell you a little bit about Indonesia. That there are, because in the way that we try to gain our identity, a lot of tension gatherings, like new philosophy. Not new philosophy, but something growing up promoted by the government or by Islamic fundamentalists. Then artists try to work their way up. So in the 80s and the 90s, from the 70s, we were living under the tyranny of dictatorships, and so a lot of art was either quite pretty or then slowly becoming very, very graphic, political way for people channeling their frustrations. And after 2000, the art is becoming different, and I'm trying to do that way, like to celebrate the quite personal way rather than becoming part of this agenda of the politics of Indonesia. So that's basically the fundamental of my artwork is looking things from my personal memory, and I don't know, maybe I believe myself too much. I think that my personal memory can also be part of collective memory to a degree, or vice versa. This is probably my way that I distrust any sort of historical statement or historical findings in colonial books, shall we say. But I only have a very limited time here. It's this opportunity to thanks to Charleston to have me here. I met beautiful people, handsome people, you know, and that is allow me to go deeper into, you know, people's kitchen and people living rooms and the kitchen of the restaurant and the toilet and then the, you know, and those things is very, very important because, you know, we are, as an artist, we have to be, I have to be a little bit understanding of how anthropology and sociology works to a degree. I have a couple of notes here, what I write about Charleston, if I may read it to you. I am but a whisperer. Will you let me see your hidden garden? Take me to see those Spanish moss hanging on the branches of old oaks. Will you let me touch your window, your walls, when the night falls? The sea is dark, the sea is light. The sea is full, and the sea is empty. Your voice is the sea. Would you like to hang out and have coffee? Or a glass of red, then whiskey, maybe. And the French lady, let us talk about autumn and its window, the civilization or colonialization, and what is after. What else do you want me to tell you about this town? I see you holding man-made roses. I see wooden and concrete pineapples. I've seen moonblood rising and disappearing by the bridge, by the marsh. Your white mansion houses and wooden cottages, the dark windows. Sing me one more song, please, and I'll draw you a line. You know, heaven is a dream, right? Like to take you sailing to the Pacific Ocean, to see the stars and the sad moon rising. It is slow and it is boring. It is lonely, like if it is from another side of the story, of history. Now I'm in the mountain. The leaves are falling. I'll miss you. I'll miss you. I'll miss you like a dog to a bone, like seagull to the shore, like night to the full moon, like tomorrow to yesterday, like I to you, like river to the mountain, like mountain we mentioned to the ancient. I will be long. It will be long and will be lonely. A little house by the hill, a house of bees and Devonshire. Let the wind blow, let the curtain open, let the moonblood light up your face so often. And let me see your green eyes to meet my shadow in it, frozen eyes. It has been long, it has been short, it has been bright, it has been bright, it has been wondrous. Your voice is the river to where we forget all matters. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Giovanni, for coming and sharing. Before you leave, make sure to walk around and just try to absorb everything. It's incredible. So thank you. So now So we're really allowed to interpret that whenever we want. So when we were thinking, like, okay, crossover, what does that mean? Like, Charleston's a lot of crossover. We crossover between old historic and like new modern, between the design community and the business community, between the ocean and the downtown, between biking and cars. We know that's a big crossover sometimes. Or tourists and locals, which we don't really do very much crossover. But when we were thinking about it, we're like, who could do this? And Paul, I started seeing his face there on the cover of Art Mag, on the cover of Sister and Yard, and all kinds of stuff. And I thought, what a cool guy. I reached out to Holy City and said, I don't know this guy, Paul, but I kind of want to know him. And they were like, we can't really give you his email. We forwarded it to him. He probably won't respond. And then the next day, I got an email from Paul that was like, hey, let's meet up for coffee. I was like, okay, I'd love to. Paul's awesome. He is born in Columbia, South Carolina man, born and raised. Been in Charleston since 2001. He is a professor here at the college teaching sociology, and he is also part of the Beard and Mustache Society, which I am an honorary member and something now. I have it proves it. I was looking at his bio. He has won many competitions in the world and nationally, and most recently was on the Holy City beer can with his beautiful mustache. So, without further ado, Paul Roof.
Good morning. These will be more like reflections and just sort of stream of consciousness with crib notes to boot. But first and foremost, I would like to thank Sophie, Chloe, and Madison, the honorary members of the Holy City Beard and Mustache Society this morning, and everybody who's helped to put on Creative Mornings. I mean, this is a great event, and it reminds me a lot of Pechacucha, which was a series of great events, and I know some of you are familiar with those. Luli is not here today, or I do not see Luli, but she spoke at the first Creative Mornings, and it sort of warmed my heart because she is a former student of mine. And there she was talking about the theme color. So, and here I am talking about the theme crossover. It's an honor to be here and speak with you this morning, and ultimately, when I think about it and reflect on it, it's a badge of honor to have been fired from Charleston Southern University. I think that will be written on my tombstone. Beer can professor. And it's strange. If you would have asked me 4 months ago, and people would ask me, they'd say, Paul, do you ever see yourself going back to the College of Charleston? I would unequivocally say no. Right? I am happy where I am. And that's not the hand that I was dealt. And I'm back here at College of Charleston, and I couldn't be happier. But I fully intended to spend my 20 years plus at CSU. And I vividly remember 7 years ago leaving the College of Charleston and packing up my office on 19 St. Philip Street and sort of saying to myself, can I do this? Right? I'm an urban person. I'm a Charleston guy. Can I get in my truck on James Island and drive 50 miles round trip to Goose Creek 9 months a year, 5 days a week? But I don't have to do that anymore. But I did it, and I was going to do it. My truck thanks me every morning that I'm not doing that. But it was like being in exile. I mean, my office was in the library basement for the first 5 years. And I think they tolerated me. And here at College of Charleston, I've got nothing short of a hero's welcome home. I mean, people high-five me around campus. They give me fist bumps on the street. Grandmothers recognize me at Forever 21. I don't know what a grandmother was doing. I don't even know what I was doing. But this grandmother looks at me, and sometimes I get these looks up and down, and they just go, "You're the guy." What guy? The professor on the can. Yes, that's me. And I don't dress like that every day. It's not my everyday look. But to speak to the theme today, it's not some big revelation. But what I have learned over the last 6 years is that Charleston And that's what I want to speak to today. Because ultimately, I crossed over to CSU, and I crossed back over to College of Charleston. And when I left for CSU, my chair, who had been in Charleston for 20 years, I said, I'm going to be going up to Charleston Southern in the fall. She said, where is it? It's invisible, right? I mean, but those kids are not invisible. They come downtown all the time, they work downtown, and when they are downtown, they blend in. And people just think they're College of Charleston kids. And I'm going to share some stories about those kids in a little bit. But you know, right here, right now, we are crossing over. Our city is crossing over. You know, I've crossed over, and if you have not crossed over, and I'm sure some of you have, I hope to give you some tips on how to do it. And I think the way that I did it is because I'm not artistic. I couldn't paint anything on these walls. I'm not eccentric, but I do have an award for that. I can't even draw six figures. But what I have and what I've tried to embrace ever since I went to college is an imagination. And that imagination is called the sociological imagination. So there's this great post secret that I share in my classes, and I put up an image of a classroom, and it says, every day I try to make magic where it doesn't exist. Because I think about when my little girl goes to school and my little boy goes to school, they run into school excited, right? And they go down to their little stations in the kindergarten room, and they have such joy in the classroom. And sometimes when you go into a college classroom, they just, oh gosh, it was a crazy night last night. I hope he lets us out early today. But sometimes the imagination has been sucked out of the classroom, and I try to bring it back. So my talk today will not be about me, it will be about my students, your students. I mean, because they're part of our city, and it will be about our city and you. It's sort of cliche, but students always teach the professor more than the professor teaches the students. And that's what's happened to me. And I want to share pictures of those students. But first, this guy. This is infamy. This is what I will go down as the Chucktown Follicle Brown guy. This picture is, well, this is a painting of the picture. The picture was taken in New Orleans at the National Beard and Mustache Contest a year ago. And that picture had its own life. It went viral and went all over the place, and news outlets, etc., Facebook posts, Instagram posts, etc. Then the picture got used by a Young Life program out in Texas. My old buddy, who was my doubles partner, has run a Young Life in Lubbock, Texas for 20 years. It got used at mustache parties like that. It got put on the beer can. It was used for Dig South last year as well. And in my firing meeting, I told my administrators, you know, this is art, right? I don't control this. Right? And next month it could be on a pair of socks. I'm not trying to profit off of it. Because I knew if I tried to profit off of it, that might put my job at risk. I was trying to keep my job. But it was like talking to a wall. They had already made their decision. So let me share some students with you and talk about how they crossed over. CSU girl. Right. Among your first image here is RHEA. And RHEA is from Maryland. And you might not look at her and think CSU. Right? You might just think another College of Charleston student. But she was quintessentially a Folly Beach girl. So here's a girl who lived on Folly Beach for her 4 years and commuted to Goose Creek, or Duck Ditch, as they call it. You know? You wouldn't think that at first glance. And I want to share what RHEA said, because I told her I would use her picture. And I got these stories over and over again while I was teaching at CSU. I really wanted to live in the Charleston area. The area. But University of Charleston, I think she means C of C, was cost prohibitive. Charleston Southern was accessible to me both physically and academically. It was also affordable and took most of my credits from Coastal. Right, so she went to Coastal first, which from where I transferred. The drive from Folly was mainly on the highway, so it went by pretty fast. I mean, I wouldn't want to do that drive every day. But here's somebody gleefully doing it. And that is her story. I mean, the kids at CSU were really no different from the kids at College of Charleston. And that's what we have to think about, right? I mean, if you've never been to that campus, do yourself a favor. 205B is the exit. Just drive through. Just expose yourself to what it looks like and cross over. I mean, weekend trips are a lot of fun. You can go get some Willie Jules barbecue while you're right up there. I found all the good restaurants, trust me. Because when you're on the side of the interstate in the library basement, sometimes you got to get out and go sit by the reflecting blind. And do a little reflecting while you're in the yard. Let's look at the next picture. So this is the CSU Sociology Club, and such great kids. And they would sometimes not get off the drag. And when I say the drag, I mean the Market or King Street. Because that's all they knew. And so they were sort of like tourists when they came downtown. So I saw it as my job to bring them down to Second Sunday on King Street. And we voted for officers, we hung out, we went in shops and stores, etc. Everybody sees that picture and they always say, Goonies forever. Their favorite part. That was a great student of mine, Brett, who lived out on Johns Island, and we did some great work out there with rural missions. And if you've never been out to Johns Island and hung out over there and interacted with some of the migrant farmers, I mean, do yourself a favor. I mean, because that's an example of crossing over just 15 miles away. But the student in the middle with the flower is Presley, and she has an interesting story. They all have interesting stories. But Presley basically lived on the College of Charleston campus. She lived behind the new science building. Her parents bought her a house, and she lived there. But her parents divorced when she was in high school, and they moved to different states. So she could never go to the College of Charleston with in-state tuition. So here she is, living downtown, right over there. And she had to go to Trident for 2 years, and then CSU for 2 years. I mean, these stories. I mean, I would sit in my office, and students would come in, and they'd close the door, and they'd say, "What are you doing here? How did you get here?" It's like they had found some secret chamber, right, where they could tell the things that they were experiencing on campus. So she's crossed over. RHEA's crossed over. The next student. This is MARIJA. She is Serbian. She is international tennis player, cosmopolitan, and jet set. Right, many different languages, etc. She thought Charleston was only, what's it called, Mad River, or what's the name of the place downtown? I've never been to it. And that's all Charleston was to her. And I gave her a list and said, I'm giving you a scavenger hunt. Okay, you have to get off the market and go to these 5 places. You have to go rent a bike over here, meet the owner, and get a business card and a picture with the owner. And then you have to go over to Kudu Coffee, meet the owner, get a business card, and take a picture with the owner. Then you've got to go down to Indigo and Cotton, meet the owner, get a picture with him, and get a card. Then you've got to go to Road Wave, which is not around anymore, Brett, and take a picture with Brett and hang out with him. And she did all of those things, went to different markets that were open, comes back, opens up my door and says, "It's like Brooklyn." See, I told you. There's more to it. So she crossed over and she got to see not just the tourist Charleston, but the local Charleston, right? And that's us. Let's look at the next picture. This was really emotional for me. This is Chris. And he's a youth ministry major, and he works at the Publix on Folly. And he lived in Goose Creek on campus. The week that I was fired, I was going through a lot, and, I went into Publix by myself without my kids and wife and just sort of had some alone time in the grocery store. Trying not to be seen, and I go to the Publix, and, I think it was July or June, and it was really hot out. And he's standing there at the checkout, bagging groceries and just eyeing me down, right, looking at me up and down. And I can feel his eyes. And I'm like, I don't know this kid. He walks me out to my truck and put the groceries in the back of the truck. And he says, I go, gosh, it's hot out here, just making small talk. And he goes, yeah, it really is. And I got to go back up to campus. I was like, well, what campus? And he goes, Charleston Southern. I was like, okay. He goes, I know who you are. I know your story. I see you in here all the time with your wife and kids. You're the talk of the town. And you're the talk of the religion majors and the youth ministry majors. Because these kids have crossed over in more ways than you think. These youth ministry majors and these religion majors, they hang out and watch RHEA, right? They drink a couple of pints and they open up the Bible in their little nook and have deep conversations. They're not teetotalers. Great kids. But Chris, he said to me, he goes, Dr. Roof, I was going to be in your pop culture class this fall. And, I was just crestfallen. I was going to get to know this kid a lot more than I did at that particular moment. And I just put my hand on his shoulders and I said, man, I'm sorry. I wanted to be your professor and I would have loved to gotten to know you better. But I mean, a kid drives from Goose Creek to the Folly Publix to bag groceries? No. He bags groceries so he can go down to Folly and serve. Right? I mean, there aren't many kids downtown that drive to Monk's Corner or Goose Creek to bag groceries. Right? I mean, these kids are crossing over. And you wouldn't know this on the surface. I mean, they're doing amazing things. And he's done amazing things. And, I miss kids like this who I really got to know on a personal level. Let's go to the last slide. This is Trenton. And he's probably one of the most unique kids you meet on campus. I didn't even have him as a student. I just saw him around campus. He had so much class, so much swag, so much personality. I mean, he was just like a diamond on campus walking around shining. And I met him or got to know him because you can, I love hashtagging on Instagram and searching. And I think I was looking. I think I was looking through hashtag CSU or Charleston Southern University, and there came up Prep Surf. Prep Surf was his Instagram handle. And we just got to know each other, hang out on campus, and he gave the students' commencement speech at graduation this year. And let me tell you, he was 100 times better than the person that they had hired to come and give the commencement speech, who basically lifted Steve Jobs' commencement speech from Stanford University 2005. Right? Plagiarism. I know a little bit of those things, teaching research methods, but this is the kid that gave the great speech. And when I was packing up my office on that Wednesday, and the last two things that I had to go get, I think it was like a picture and drop off my keys, etc. I'm sitting there in the hallway, and there's Trenton. And he walks by me, and this is my last interaction with the CSU student. He just gives me the fist bump. And goes, Dr. Roof. I mean, I'll never forget that. I mean, and he's going on and doing amazing things. So let me close by saying, these students have crossed over. We're crossing over as a community, as a city. And it's not about rankings. We need to forget about being ranked number one. We just need to concern ourselves with being the best, being the coolest, being the most unique, right? Because my self-esteem is not going to go down if we go to number 2 or 3. I mean, we're still going to be a great place, and I'm not going anywhere. And I hope you're not going anywhere. There are so many other students that I could talk about and mention as well. But the crossover is upon us. We are the ones who will write the next 20 years here in Charleston and here in the Low Country. We've got to make West Ashley, the school is downtown. We've got to make Mount Pleasant, the school is downtown. We've got to make Park Circle, the school is downtown. Because when you go to Austin, people don't discriminate. You know, it's like East Austin's awesome. So is, you know, UT, and so is that area of town. The whole town has to have us, right? You should be able to go to, you know, flea markets, etc., in all of those areas and do really cool things. And if you see a tourist in town, say, go to Jean's Hot Dog. You know, get in a cab, or, you know, maybe we'll have different transportation or better transportation modes in the next 20 years. So, what you will get from me, and what my city will get from me, and what my college will get from me for as long as I live is the best that I got. Right? I'm going to lay it on the line here in Charleston for the next 20 years. I'm going to pour out everywhere I go my heart and my soul so we can cross over, and when we look back 30, 40 years from now, we're the best, not just number 1. And I think everybody in this room has the potential to do that. And forever, I will rep the Holy City. So thank you for having me. It wasn't the first exact day, but I'll get to that. But I was up on campus with my kids, and here's a great irony. For the 7 years I was at Charleston Southern, my 2 kids were at ECDC, which is on the corner of St. Philip and Wentworth Street. So there I was doing this 25-mile commute, and if I would have still been at College of Charleston, they would have been across the street. So I could have gone to lunch with them and hung out with them a lot more. And now I'm back in that office with 12-foot ceilings and 8-foot high, 5 windows that are 8 foot high, and they're gone. You know, they're over on James Island. But it's just wild. So I was walking back on campus, and I was walking through Cougar Mall, and there's the Cougar, and there's Seton Brown giving a tour. And there was like this moment where he looked up and he saw me with Catherine and Matthew, and he's got 20 deep, and he goes, "Welcome back." I mean, that for me was like coming full circle. And of course, he has his picture behind Jack's Cafe, and I had to go in there for a ceremonial last meal. Make sure you get over there today. So I'm already full of emotion. But I went into that classroom, my first class that I taught. Being back there on the first day was the same class I was in on September 11th, when September 11th happened. And that just, you know, was a lot of memories, and seeing new faces and being in the same room. It was in the library basement, the old library basement, so another full circle kind of thing.
Anyone else have any
Feel free.
questions?
I'll give an honest answer. Sorry, what I got fired.
What is your enthusiasm for teaching?
Say again?
Like, what keeps your enthusiasm up for teaching?
You know, I teach the same lectures, give similar tests, that sort of thing. I quit trying. I don't go in with an ideology. You know, I don't go in with an agenda. I go in, and this might sound unacademic, but I go in to get to know them. I go in to learn their stories and share my life with them, and in turn, they share their life with mine. And that's what life's about. I mean, what are they going to remember? I gave a lecture, and it's a prostitution lecture on deviance. And I was giving it up at Charleston Southern. And a girl talks to me, and she says, my husband had you 8 years ago at college at Charleston. And I said, well, what does he remember from my class 8 years later? And she said, he remembered the prostitution lecture. So they remember stuff, and maybe that's why I do it. But, you impact their lives, and they go on to great things, and that's what it's about. And you get a letter of reference, or they become an attorney, or they have kids and come back and see you. I would tell my students at Charleston Southern, I want you to come back to this campus. They'll have to come downtown now. But, and they do. I've got like a line out the door some days of old CSU students coming in. And I want you to walk around the reflecting pond and say, oh my gosh, there's Dr. Roof, he still hadn't shaved. and I wanted to be that professor because when I walk back on the campus of Presbyterian College where I went, I get chills. And I walk on that campus as I did a year ago, and I'm like, there's Dr. Trenton. He's still here. I feel like I've been transported into a time machine because those people are doing what I want to do. They're just consistent and reliable, and they keep doing their jobs, and that's how you make a legacy.
Anyone else? It's okay if you don't touch that.
Alex.
Can you talk about your crossover, like deciding not to shave?
Darren? No. I'll make it brief. I always had a beard, from college on, shaved it in the summer, did goatees, did, mustaches, sideburns, that sort of stuff. But I drove Karen kicking and screaming 03 to 05 to Farmington, New Mexico, where I lived my dream. Dogs, trucks, snowmobiling, snowboarding, and Four Seasons. And I just noticed, I always had the beard, but I saw young guys, right, and I was in my 30s then, who came down from the mountain once a year with beards down here. And I was like, well, one day, and I'd always loved beards, I said, one day I'm going to do that. And so, August 10th, 2004, I looked in the mirror and I said, never again. This is it. This is going to be the last time I take a razor to my face because I don't like the way I look without a beard. Right now, I never thought I'd take it this far. I never thought I'd do freestyle. Like that's what all that stuff is. But then I had a moment where I met Willie Chevalier from Germany in Bend, Oregon, and stood next to this guy, and he came in with his wife, ballroom dancing, all styled up, right? Like he wears this every day, it takes 3 hours, and it's like a horn, and he's ballroom dancing with his wife, and I said, that's me. I said, forget this full beard natural. So Karen and I have been to, Alaska, Norway for these world championships, and you imitate your heroes. So, I learned how to do it. Maybe I should have gone to cosmetology school. Beauty school dropout. But I've learned a lot about hair and products. And that's the first thing people want to know. They say, what do you use? What do you put in there? Girlfriend. I've got a whole toolbox, right? And a tackle box that's converted. How long does it take? 5 hours if you want to win a championship. You'll see me run around town with it like that occasionally, and the Beard Club marches in the Christmas parade every year. We're usually behind the Basset Hounds or the Greyhounds, so that's always a good crossover. Oh, they pooped, be careful. But and I'll be wearing the red suit. And you just can't, the rule for the Christmas parade, you cannot dress like Santa. They'll kick you out. There's only one Santa Claus, and you confuse the children. If there's 3 or 4, at least at the booth, so don't mess it up. They will